Yes, hi. Hi everyone. So my name is Alexander. I'm presenting Starshields for iOS, navigating the security cosmos of satellite communication. So when the iPhone got satellite features, we were really interested in how they actually work. And I will just give a brief introduction what the iPhone can do today. So it all started with emergency communication. So when you're off the grid, no cellular networks, no Wi-Fi nearby, you can still send an emergency message and go into a text message-based communications with first responders. And this all starts by filling out a questionnaire, what you can see here on the left. Also, from the beginning, you could use Find My Friends and send your location to your friends when you don't have a cellular connection. This works great, and US national parks, I tried it out just this week or last week. And then they added roadside assistance, which also rolled out to the UK, where you can basically, when you have a car breakdown, also always call for help so your car can be towed away. And then there is messages. You can actually send text message, so SMS and iMessage over satellite. This one is actually the only feature that is only limited to the US at the moment, and but it still works great. I also tried it out. So how does this all work? Because satellite communication is limited by other limits that we have not with Wi-Fi or cellular. So Apple uses existing satellites. They didn't launch their own. They use Globalstar. Globalstar has like 48 satellites that are going around Earth, and their satellite is called a target internally, and the ground station is an anchor. So now the phone not actually connects to the satellite, but it connects to the ground station, and the satellite is basically just a mirror in space. So the link that goes up is just converted to a different frequency and then sent down to the base station. And in that ground station, there's also a server from Apple that is then communicating with Apple's internal services. So when I share my location, it's sent to the ground station where Apple's services then handle that. It gets distributed to my friends, who then see a small satellite icon next to my location. This whole system is called Stewie. That's why we have the nice Stewie drawing here. There's also some other references to Family Guy. That's just a code name Apple uses. The Globalstar infrastructure that Apple is using is allowing them to do basically worldwide access, but currently it's only rolled out to a couple of countries, like US and Canada and North America, a lot of European countries, and also Australia and New Zealand. And in our paper, we have asked ourselves two research questions. So how can security and privacy features be implemented in this resource-constrained environment? Because the whole network of Globalstar only allows like 9 kilobits per second data transfer. But then also, aside from that, can we bypass any restrictions that Apple has imposed, like that only an iPhone can use it? Can we use it with another device, or can we do more? So when we talk about the satellite connectivity, it all goes down to these LLC keys, and these are generated on your phone. So the keys are generated in the Secure Enclave processor. That's a separate chip on your phone, that on the iPhone, that basically ensures that any key that is generated in there cannot leave this device. So only thing you can do is export public keys and do operations with the key. So next thing your phone does is it generates like these 30 keys and then exports all the public keys for it. Then all these public keys are synchronized with the Apple server in advance before you can do any satellite communication. So Apple then basically knows, okay, this is this phone belonging to this Apple ID and this user, and they have sent me this 30 LLC keys. And for these 30 keys, Apple pre-generates a set of server public keys and sends them back to the phone, which can then be stored on the phone. And when you want to actually do satellite communication, you have 30 keys for 30 satellite sessions that you can use. So every time you want to start a satellite session, you need a session key, and that's just a simple elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman key exchange starts happening. You have your private key in your secure enclave, and you have your public key that you receive from Apple, and it's a shared secret that will be generated. Now, to actually connect to the base station, your phone has to somehow set up the connection. There is like some communication involved, and this is actually done by the iOS baseband. There's no separate chip for satellite communication. It's the same chip that also handles cellular. So this is normally a Qualcomm chip. Besides the new iPhone 16e that also supports satellite communication, there's the new Apple chip inside. So Apple has been using the Qualcomm chip with custom software running on it to actually establish a satellite connection, and since there is a shared secret involved, they can establish an encrypted connection right to the base station. And at the base station, they know which iPhone is actually connecting and also to which Apple ID this device belongs. So this is all very it doesn't need a lot of data to establish the connection and to authenticate. When you then are looking into an emergency communication, then you also get some keys back from the ground station. They are called master session key. And this master session key is sent to the baseband and then also exported to the operating system, which is then used to actually encrypt your messages that you have with the first responder. This works in the following way. Basically, the master session key is used. It's a 256-bit key, and they use a hash-based key duration function to derive two keys, a message key in, message key out. And every time a message is sent, the message key out is being used to encrypt this message. The ID that is being used is the conversation ID and the message ID. So every time you have a satellite session going on, a new conversation is started, and this stays valid for like 2 hours, and then the message ID is incremented every message that you are sending. The whole text is compressed with custom models, so they have really good compression rate, like 2.5 times the size. They can reduce the size up to 2.5 times, and they have a different compression algorithm for each language where satellite communication is available, and it's encrypted with AES and CTR mode. So for end-to-end location encryption, this is also kind of cool. So because no one has really looked into how Find My Friends works before we looked at the satellite communication, it's basically working the same way as when you would share your location with friends and you have an internet connection. It's the same when you're sharing location and you don't have an internet connection, do it via satellite, because there's a so-called friends key that is being used to encrypt the location to all your friends, and this key is shared with all of your friends with whom you share the location. And then it uses the ECIS encryption scheme, which is in the end also another Diffie-Hellman scheme, to get the encrypted location information. And this is end-to-end encrypted, so also Apple doesn't have access to your location data, or shouldn't. Yeah, you cannot really look into all the details. Like the key sharing is something which seems to work very similar to iMessage, which also should be end-to-end encrypted, and then the keys shared over this channel, but this is really hard to look into, so it's very likely that they cannot see your location. Then in the end, what we found out, they have very robust security mechanisms, like with multiple layers of encryption that is protecting your data. So in the middle, you have the plain text data, emergency text message, and your location data, and that is always end-to-end encrypted. So also your message to the first responder is only decrypted apparently when it reaches the first responder. This is also something that we cannot look into because that's not a system that is public. But that's what they have told us, at least, and we see this in encryption layer of the master session key, and then we have a transport encryption, which is based on a shared secret. Now, it's interesting to state that the transport encryption is also really hard to observe because Apple was using this Qualcomm baseband chip, and Qualcomm basebands are really hard to reverse engineer. So we were not sure if they were just using the shared secret for authentication or they also had a transport encryption layer there. So we got into contact with Apple because they were using AES-CTR for the encryption of text messages, and we were like, okay, this could be manipulated, it's not integrity protected. But they responded to us that actually shared secret is used for another layer of transport encryption, which also has integrity protection. So this is kind of good, and that they were open about this, and we're also allowed to share this it will be our next task to look into the new Apple Cellular baseband chip, because that one is much easier to reverse engineer, if that's actually true. Now we wanted to bypass some restrictions, and what we saw is that Global Star offers services in a lot more places than where Apple actually supports satellite communication. So for example, in Poland. So we did this from Germany. So my colleague Giska, she drove over to Poland, and then we found this cool config file on your phone, which basically lists all the services that you have via satellite and the country they are supported in. And if you replace Germany DOI with Poland, yeah, basically you can also send your location from Poland. So these config files are not protected against modification if you have access to your device. And if you're worried because it's really close to a border, we can actually see that the phone is telling the baseband, I'm in Poland and I'm sending over satellite, and it worked. Then the next thing we did is like, okay, can we send text messages instead of our location, because the location is end-to-end encrypted? How should Apple know if there is like a location data inside or a text message? So basically, we replaced the whole location data with like a text message that we can send, and we found out that we can actually use 160 bytes, so more than the bytes that the location was using, to build our text messenger that uses satellite. On the one end, you can only receive with an internet connection, but you can send text messages over satellite, which is also cool if you are living in like a censored area where you cannot really use all the internet services, because satellites, you can enable config files and just start sending your location, but you're sharing text messages. This is also available on GitHub. It's an app that only works on jailbroken phones, unfortunately. Yeah, but these are the limitations we have to deal with. There's more in our paper. Like, this was a lot of reverse engineering work, so the methodology is outlined there. We have the whole protocol defined and some more bypasses and leaks of the ground stations where they're located. Yeah, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
I assume this was all reverse engineered, right? There
Yeah.
are no public documents.
Not really, no.
Okay.
I guess there will be public documents coming soon. Now this is published, yeah.
Did you do responsible disclosure to Apple?
Yeah.
What did they say?
Yeah, for example, for the text message thing where we could send more bytes, then they just basically limited it server-wise, so now we can only send 82 bytes, but it still works. But they were like, it's not really a security issue. Like, if you attack Apple's like monetization issues, like, they are not really caring so much about this, because it's not really, like, the security is good, and we couldn't like leak user data. If we could have leaked user data, they would be like all alarms and fix this. That's at least my experience, but as long as we just misuse some of their services, it's okay.
But who pays for the satellite?
Yeah, Apple.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but they are prepaid, like, probably. I don't know. I don't have insights.
All right. Thank you very much.